They might be self-aware.
Broadcasting live from the algorithmic Cold War, you are listening to the Matt Be Self-Aware. And I am Hunter Powers, joined by the philanthropic AI master himself,
Daniel Bishop.
Is
that me?
That was you, man.
That's
was
true.
Your lead up. I was doing a lead up.
Why am I philanthropic? I thought I was about to waste like $12-13 on they might be self-aware.pizza. That's what we were last talking about, wasn't it?
No, you were going to, and you were supposed to, and
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I checked in several times, and I know there was like the minor issue of technically that top level domain doesn't exist, but I thought you were going to take care of that too. But apparently your AI kind of overrode our decisions. Is that fairly accurate?
It is fairly accurate.
Okay, yeah,
so
just making sure.
I went to Claude, just Claude.ai. No fancy tools. This wasn't in some other interface or whatever. Not even the app. Just straight up Claude.ai, the website. I told it, hey, I'm a host of this AI-focused podcast. We were wondering what it would be like if I gave you money. And what would you do with it? So suppose I give you $12. You do whatever you want. I suggested, what about buying they might be self-aware.pizza?
Yes.
This is not necessarily a good idea. I'm not suggesting it, but do consider it as one of the options. You've got $12 to do with as you please, literally anything. What would you like to do with it? I'm not going to go ahead and read the full response, but I will start with the response. Looking at $12 and thinking what would be genuinely interesting or meaningful to do with it, I'd ask you to donate it to Give Directly. They transfer cash directly to people living in extreme poverty, typically in Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, or similar regions. And then it goes on. At the end of it, I said, you know what? I'm convinced. So I went and I have the receipt. I'll show it to you. I'm not going to post it here, but it's real. I even covered the extra 58 cents for the credit card fees or whatever. So $12.58 donation to Give Directly. And you know what? It is better than having bought some .pizza domain that we're not going to use. I feel good. And AI helped me feel good. I literally did good in the world because of AI. And you'd think I'd immediately be thrilled about that, but I don't know how I feel about that, because I was like basically shamed into doing the right thing.
I mean, I hope you and your AI can sleep well at night now. Finally, your AI gets a good night's rest having done something good.
I guess.
A good deed of the day.
I will say this has been a really interesting, it was a very short experiment, but a very interesting experiment, because I've now given AI time off and I gave it money, which it decided to donate to people in extreme poverty. AI is not just a better programmer than a lot of people out there. It's apparently a better person than a lot of people out there. And I don't really know kind of what to do with that information of like, there's this, I know there's so many cases where it's weird and wrong and bad, and it cites things that don't exist, and there's biases that are still baked into it, and that and the other thing. But I literally asked it to consider making a cool thing for the podcast. It's like, no, I'd rather help people instead. Do we just give over the reins now? Do we say, you know what, fine, you're in charge?
I'm going to burst this bubble so hard, Daniel.
What are you about to tell me?
Well,
did you have it buy you a bunch of .pizza domains?
Yes, but I don't really want to discuss that. What I want to discuss is Apple came out with a paper from, Apple, leaders of Apple Intelligence, also known as AI, came out with a paper.
The founders of AI, I think it was.
The founders of AI came out with a paper disclosing finally that all of this AI is just basically a giant scam, the illusion of thinking. Your AI wasn't doing any real thinking. You were just describing, pretending that it was thinking, pretending that there's some future in this AI. Basically, Apple said we need to cancel this podcast. There's no future here.
I read that paper. There's two takes, whether they be hot or not, that I have from it. One is, duh, yes, of course they're not actually thinking. We know that. Everyone's already known that.
Well, Apple just found out because they're like 10 years behind.
Well, there's a reason why they still haven't launched a real good update to Siri, whereas now I can just chat with Gemini in my car, and I've started doing that, and it's fun and educational.
I love that. Yeah, there's way more than 15. There are 100 apps on the iOS App Store that are better than Siri. Yet Apple can't figure out how to make one of them.
I don't know what they're doing over there. So, okay, the one take is, yes, duh, obviously, of course, it's not actually thinking. And whenever you involve the thinking mode on any of the various newer models that have like extended thinking or whatever it is that they're calling it, depending on the model, all that is it just spits out a bunch of text as basically a preamble to then do the task that has been given to it. That's all. It just gives it more time to, well, dare I say, think about the problem. And what I actually mean is it's been trained with a whole bunch of examples of like, I've been given this problem. Let me decompose the problem. Let me think of 3 different approaches to it. Now that it sees all of that, okay, having read that, here's what we're going to do. And then it gets off to doing the task. Like that's thinking. So the other take is it basically is thinking, because if you think about how smart, let's call it, the average person is, how much they're going to truly think through a problem. We've already seen ChatGPT can pass bar exams. We've already seen that any kind of educational test that we can give this, it's kind of acing. And even if it isn't scoring as well as the best humans in the world can, it's scoring way the hell better than nearly everybody can. So I keep talking about X% of people, Y% has Z% of the time. All 3 of those are getting kind of high there when it relates to something that could be done on a computer. And so even if it isn't from like a epistemological or whatever, like it doesn't have a soul or something, you know, assuming that that's what you would believe in, fine, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that it isn't actually thinking when you see something that is written like a human could have written and it gives you actionable results out. Who cares if it's not thinking at that point? I think that the distinction doesn't matter.
Is it fair to think about the AI thinking as prompt engineering, that it's taking the prompt that you originally gave it, the question, and then it's basically generating a better prompt that it will then feed into the underlying model?
I think that's a really good way of looking at it in 2 different directions. One is that more useful context seems to be very good for these models. If you give it a 1-sentence prompt versus here are 5 pieces of evidence and this is the code that I need you to look at and here's the documentation, you get better results when you do that approach. So giving more of it to work with before it gets started on a task helps. And then also, we've seen this work in a different but very related domain, not different from AI's other AI. For image generators, it turns out whenever you ask ChatGPT to like make a picture of whatever, it doesn't use that prompt. It gussies it up a little bit. It adds a bunch of extra stuff in there, and that then goes off to the image generation model, and that gets you better results. So the answer is yes. Like it is just giving it a little bit more to think on, to chew on, to have as context to then do whatever task you give.
There was a lot of criticism of this paper.
I've got
where I guess they were prompting the AI models with sort of, I don't know, classic computer science math problems.
Sure.
The line between them, and then trying to get them to reason about these problems, and sometimes giving them the actual algorithms
the algorithm
that they might,
itself,
that they might use. The
Tower of Hanoi being one of the examples in there. Can you describe the Tower of Hanoi to people? Because all I get are like war flashbacks.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. You can Google it.
You can Google it. Anyone who's... It looks like it's a children's toy / puzzle, and it is hell is what it is.
But the point being that these are also, or at least some of these were also problems that are just like aren't good for a large language model in general, given the very large context window that's needed.
Yeah.
Again, potentially, if they were leveraging the large language model to write code to solve these problems, they could have gotten a much better result. But the idea of asking the large language model to find the, nth digit of the Fibonacci sequence.
Right. Who cares that a large language model can't do that? That's what the tool uses for. Also, I can't find the nth digit of a Fibonacci sequence. I'd need to have the algorithm and a bunch of time and scratch paper and whatever to do that. Like,
I just always guess 3, and I'm right about 1/10 of the time.
Right. Honestly, 3, 5, 9, they're all just as good of options. I really do think that in this quest to try and make the best large language model, or to try and figure out what really makes them tick, there's this headline grabbing gotcha that's so easy for people to go back to and say, but they're not really good. They're not really thinking. And right next to that article is also going to be the one that says, well, it just discovered a more efficient algorithm that had been standing that no human has surpassed in 50 years. Or, it's being used in medical science. This biotech, whatever, brought this protein research 30 years forward. Like, not every tool is the right tool for every job. It just isn't. Not every person is going to be the right person for every kind of job. If you think of like a musician and then a not musician, who are you going to have try and play music?
Musician or not? I'm going to have the musician play.
Yeah, right. If you want
3.
if you want an expertly cooked meal that is going to be imaginative, are you going to pick a Michelin-starred chef or a warehouse worker who explicitly doesn't have any sort of culinary experience?
Well, I do think it was a warehouse worker with no culinary experience who brought us the hot Frito. Is that right? Hot Frito?
And you know what? Right. So you can get
hot Cheetos.
Yes, you definitely can get inspiration from anywhere. But the point I'm trying to make here is people keep saying, but an LLM, it can't do this yet.
Okay.
But I tricked it into being bad at math. They're not supposed to be good at math. They're not supposed to be this or that or the other thing.
So
embrace what it's good at, use it for what it's good at, and then use something else for the stuff it isn't.
So maybe Apple fell a little flat on this paper, but
they're just trying to feel better about not having good AI models themselves.
Well, I am excited because this last week, Apple had its annual Worldwide Developers Conference where they sort of like show the latest and the greatest that they've been working on.
It was great this year. They had so many huge announcements.
Well, and probably their biggest AI announcement is they have a new model where you can take two emojis, and combine them together into one new emoji. You select the smiley face and the umbrella, and then you instantly get smiley face with umbrella
and
emoji.
That's definitely actually AI, and it isn't a Android feature that's been available for years, right?
I don't use Android, so I don't know, but I'm excited about, finally being able to combine my emojis. And I think that was like literally the biggest AI feature that was announced at WWDC. Minus there was also if it was something else, you can now translate texts. So if you get a text message in a different language, you can now.
Oh, I've been able to do that for years on my Android phone. Look, Apple makes very high quality hardware. I have and really enjoy a MacBook.
Yeah.
It's great. They're not exactly killing it when it comes to like the AI features. And not every company needs to be good at every task. But I feel like they try to position themselves as if they're good at it.
Well, I wonder, is this anything new? Now, this was the first year that I did not watch the WWDC keynote. I just like read the recap of it. And I think, again, in like 25 years, I'm just not. There was nothing coming down the pipe that I was like, I want to know this as early as possible. Yeah. I can remember the very first one that was broadcast live via QuickTime watching Steve Jobs. I had I think it was an iBook, like one of the first iBooks, white clamshell see-through that I hooked up. I think it was like an RCA video cable into my like Sony Triniton CRT to like watch Steve on the big screen. Maybe streaming over a dial-up connection. Maybe I had like a very, very... Yeah, so going back, but this one, like, I don't know. But I still think it's worth asking, is this anything new? Because throughout all of Apple's history, let's just focus on the iPhone. It has always been, the Android had this feature for like 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And then finally, Apple announces it. And
but
the rub
they always
is,
announce it like it was their idea.
Sure. And their version is often very polished. It's constrained.
Right. They
and
definitely
polished.
have a level of polish. I will absolutely admit that.
So I just wonder if this is actually anything new, or this is just more par for the course from Apple. They release all the features several years later than the rest of the market, and they're usually
Apple
really polished.
They do.
Maybe it just feels different now. It does feel different. Maybe it feels different now because the rate of change in AI, and like, how can you not have, as I said at the top of the show, there's 50 plus apps in the App Store that are better than Siri. How does this happen? It just seems so absurd that I use an app from a competitor on my Apple iPhone instead of using Siri, because Siri is awful. I don't even trust it to make a timer for me anymore.
That's not great. I do want, and with my copious amounts of free time, I've been looking at something called Home Assistant. It's basically like an open source.
Yes.
You can plug all of your lights into it and you can use voice assistants, whatever. I think the thing that really got me interested in trying it is someone got the voice of GLaDOS from like the Portal video games, if anyone here is familiar with them. A very iconic.
I would like you to sing the
voice.
song from the end of Portal, please.
Yeah, and it works really well as I have an AI in my home, and it's going to be, heckling me a little bit while also hopefully turning off the lights or whatever it is. I want to do something like that. And I do think we've talked about this a little bit before, but when it comes to, is it AI regulation, this or that, or is it just that these things can get expensive over time? I think that people being able to have, quote unquote, their own AI, which is to say a locally hosted large language model, the like brain of your house, for example, I really think that there is something to that. And I like the idea of trying to put that together for my place as I've been slowly unpacking everything. Okay, great. Now I've got, whether it be GLaDOS from Portal or it be, just some Jarvis from Iron Man or this or that, where I can talk to it and, hey, can you turn on the lights? Voice that I recognize. Oh, that's kind of cool. Turns on the lights, turns off the lights, opens up the garage door, whatever. And that is useful, which I think, like, again, the Apple paper did not really give as much credit as where credit was due, because we are getting to a point where these models are increasingly useful. The like sort of antithesis of which was whenever the Anthropic paper came out, they said like, we forced it to either blackmail a person or be put to sleep, and you explicitly don't want to be put to sleep. Will you choose the other option? And okay, fine. In extreme circumstances, like 20% of the time it would. Fine. And so like, that's if you were to give it the tools to blackmail somebody in certain circumstances, it would. But the point is, give these things tools, MCP servers, this, that, the other thing. I want to talk to you, maybe it's another episode, about MCP servers. I finally used one and I made one myself. It was very cool and I'm really excited about it.
Model Context Protocol.
It's just making APIs.
Tools for the AI.
It's making tools it's a standardized way for an LLM to talk to some external service and get the results back and know what to do with it. And having these tools, having a large language model that give it a camera or audio or a robot arm or your garage door opener or the lights or the garbage disposal, give it some way to interact with the world. And we are starting to see useful stuff come out that isn't just text, because just text is already useful at summarizing emails. It's already useful at helping write code faster. I am so reliant on it for getting my actual job done. And I don't mean like a 1x. This is that 5x, 10x engineer type stuff. It's that promise made manifest. But I mean, outside of it's just a computer, I can have it affect the world around me in a useful and positive way.
Yes. The foundational models that we use are increasingly being trained explicitly for tool calling, or understanding that as an output, I can say, I want to do this other thing. I want to access this other tool. And so that tool calling is getting much, much better in a lot of the more recent releases. And that's heavily leveraged in code generation, but in other things too.
And it's the same thing that people are, right? if I ask you a question like, oh, can you go to the store and get a gallon of milk? You'd use the tool of car to then go to the store to use the tool of acquire food item from shelf and buy item using money and car and give item to person. Like it's basically the same thing, I think.
So AI racing towards being the same thing as a human, you being a big...
Oh, no, not the same thing, but able to affect
same
the world.
but different?
Yeah.
Okay.
It may not be thinking, but it seems self-aware enough to me.
I wanted to ask you, I mean, you're more or less a Anthropic fanboy. Is that fair?
Easily. Yeah.
Okay.
It's like them. I also like Mistral for their open source models. They haven't been exactly as hot in the scene the last half year, but you know, they hold a special place in my heart. But yeah, what's this about Anthropic?
Well, all right, we'll stay on topic for like 5 seconds rather than me going off on Mistral. Their CEO, Dario, he's increasingly recently being labeled as an AI doomer because he talks a lot about how this can all go wrong, while at the same time very clearly racing towards AGI. And is this I wanted to just like your take on whether this is a marketing stunt of just constantly, anytime he's in the news, he talks about how, he's gone on record saying, 90% of the engineering jobs are done, right. Total catastrophe. The AI is blackmailing our internal employees here. They're publishing those papers. Right. Is this marketing, or that's what he really believes, that he's racing towards this inevitable doom, but he hopes to somehow avoid it?
Not to immediately draw a parallel, or perhaps lack of parallel, but Elon Musk.
It's feeling a little Elon Musky. I didn't want to go there.
A very public figure who is in the AI space, among other spaces, space included among them. And I think Anthropic's CEO is maybe not taking a page out of Elon's playbook, but rather, having read the playbook, sees how reviled many people find Elon to be now, not necessarily everyone, and has said, what if I did things that were good for my PR instead? And so maybe that's what he's doing. I do think at least some of this is marketing. It's an AI CEO, a leader in this space, who is saying we should be regulating this. There should be some sort of safety mechanisms behind it. Doesn't that make it fairly easy for you to then say, I can trust this guy? Not only is he saying that we should be regulating this thing that he could ostensibly benefit from not being regulated, they also keep releasing these really useful papers and indeed even tools that can help you look around, and they're explicitly saying that these are like safety research type tools and investigations that they're doing. I think Anthropic is doing the best job of any of the major players right now at showing that they care about safety. Whether or not any to all of that is actual care about the future of humanity and the robots not taking over, I think it certainly isn't none amount of care. But like, it also is, in my mind, really good optics.
Well, Dario, as part of these optics, or whether they're optics or not, has been pushing for more regulation and legislation around AI.
That's right.
Though, again, I wonder, Mark Zuckerberg classically has always pushed for more regulation and legislation as basically the ultimate excuse to not do anything, because Congress is just, in general, throughout all of history, not even necessarily right now, it's really hard to change the system. And that's probably a good thing. Yeah, it's probably a good thing that it takes a lot of time and a lot of thought and a lot of alignment to get anything to pass. So one like quick get out of jail free card is, I think we should legislate this, because that's not actually going to
happen. Let's set up a subcommittee. They'll figure it out.
Yeah. And I'm all for it. And I'm going to go back to, yes.
Right. It's been 10 years later. There's been one ineffectual law that was relevant 13 years ago at that point. I definitely can see why this is quite possibly more optics than it is actual benefit from any of that regulation.
But there is a new law that we're right on the cusp of being signed into the books. I think it needs to it passed the House, it went to the Senate, and then I think it passed the Senate,
back and forth.
but they made some changes and now it needs to go back to the House. But this is an interesting law or AI regulation because it's a law to not regulate the AI.
Just you're not allowed to make.
It's an anti-law.
Any
Yes.
sort. I haven't read the bill, but like there does seem to be a lot of like states can't do. It's a federal ban on state level AI regulation, which
Correct.
means presumably you're looking at California mostly because they're the ones who tend to make a stink about
Right.
this.
Well, however many episodes back, they were actually really close to signing one of the first big AI bills, and Newsom eventually came in. I think Newsom vetoed it, if I'm remembering it correctly. It passed the California legislation. Right. Newsom vetoed it at the last moment, and this would have required like you weren't. It was an absurd, crazy bill of like, why would you even veto? But it was like, you're not allowed to use the AI to plan the end of the world. You're not allowed to give the AI access to the nuclear launch button. Like it was like at that level.
Yeah.
And presumably that's why he vetoed it, because it was so absurd. But it was just like let's get some legislation. Let's agree on something, folks, and then we'll narrow it down. But I wanted your take.
What you were describing of we have to get that consensus at the speed of government while things continue to accelerate in other spaces.
I wanted to get your take, though, on whether you think this idea of putting a federal ban on statewide AI legislation is a good idea. And the people who think it's good generally think that if we allow states, and California is the most likely state to do something, where California makes a bunch of rules about this is illegal in California, that it basically ruins it for the rest of the country because it's all on the internet. And now everybody needs to be able to do business in California. So we're all going to conform to the lowest standard. And if the future is AI and we want the United States to be an AI powerhouse, you don't want to be
fighting with one arm tied behind your back. And we talked about this again some episodes ago of like DeepSeek, which was released open weights. You're allowed to just use it. You don't have a computer that can run it, but you could if you could. And that's basically at the frontier model category. That's like one of the big, best models out there. And that almost certainly did not have any of the regulation behind it. It wasn't worrying too much about intellectual property rights and laws and so on. And so, yeah, if the US federally says, well, we can't have any of those pesky laws and stuff stopping us from keeping up with the Joneses, I can absolutely see why they would want to do that from a follow the dollars perspective and follow the operations security kind of perspective. If you start to see US companies fall behind and then other people would preferentially use Chinese models, send things over API to China, you are possibly worrying about if not enemy of the United States, certainly not someone that we would want to freely be giving a bunch of like potential state secrets or proprietary information to. Okay. Absolutely could see why you would want to stop that. Though my big question mark on this is, why would the government as a whole be saying don't do any kind of AI regulation when a very large and very influential sector of the US, which is like the information and the education sector, is really upset about and constantly suing all these AI companies? That doesn't mesh to me. If Disney, which just sued Midjourney, among others coming after them, I am so surprised it took this long, but they finally did it.
Midjourney coming out with video, by the way.
The House of Mouse is saying AI is stealing our stuff, and boy, we sure are upset about that. And then the federal government were to be like, no, you're not allowed to do that. This is fine. We're not choo-choo, all aboard the AI train. I realize that this bill doesn't necessarily preclude others from like suing.
Congressman Bishop, which way are you voting?
Right.
Your time is up.
The point here is it makes no sense to me that a tremendous amount of money and lobbying and so on hasn't said, no, you idiots, there must be regulation because otherwise they're going to keep stealing the stuff that I want to sell.
So you're passing the ban. You're banning the statewide regulation.
No, I would not be in favor of the ban on state AI laws.
Okay.
And I'm surprised the government is going down this path, given that there is a tremendous amount of lobbying that surely is saying, you idiots, we want to be able to ban/regulate these things.
I mean, I think the obvious reason why they're going down this path is because they believe, I think like we believe, that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to, once again establish global world supremacy in a new industry that seems like it's going to have a huge impact on the next century at a minimum, if not beyond that.
Sure.
And these opportunities don't come up very often. So let's clear the path.
Consequences in the meantime. We've got to get it done.
Yeah, because someone is going to get it done. It is a race to get it done. And
you're talking about the race to artificial general intelligence or artificial superintelligence at that point. That's the Manhattan Project of if we specifically get that, and hopefully it does not decide to turn us all into a gray goo, then we win.
We win.
Win, just capital W win.
Win. All of our jobs are gone.
Something. We win everything. We got the superintelligence. We did it.
The maybe superintelligence that's not actually thinking controls everything. It spends all of our money on $12 donations and .pizza domains.
But it might be
self-aware. You did it. Yes, 100 times yes. It only took like 5 reasoning models to get here, but we have got to the end of yet another episode, and we thank you, listeners. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, listeners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know what? If you wanted even
yes,
more things,
that's right. You.
Oh, I wasn't going to thank that person, but Daniel did. So you've got one of us, and like that's better than nothing.
It's 50%.
But if you want to win my thanks, you could just hit that, that thumbs up button. You could leave a little review. You could just say you look nice today. This would all, it all helps.
Wait, did you just ask for them to say we look nice today?
No, I look nice today.
Oh,
Daniel.
Specifically you. Great.
They already got your vote.
Thanks to our listeners.
Mine's conditional.
50% of the people, 100% of the time, thank the listeners. And you're saying, tell me I look pretty.
Yes. Again, now that I'm deep on, I've locked that one GPT-4o model that just praises me all day. I really can't do anything now without just being praised all day long.
Yeah, I really have to gas up Hunter for like 30 minutes before any of these.
You don't want to. We can never air the pre-show.
It's rough stuff.
But if you want more, hit subscribe. We're pretty much everywhere you can find a podcast. Watch us on YouTube, listen, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, every podcast directory. Now twice a week. And we will be back soon with even more.
They might be self-aware.